Okay, I guess this is going to be an attempt at a response to both Puro and to Be Serious. Both of them had concerns about the things I had said about language. And what I want to do is see if I can't just, as quickly as I can here, lay out some basic arguments about language. And I'll see if I can do it like in basically like 4 points or something like that. The first point would be that language, as I mean it, is a condition, not an occasional activity. Okay, so first let me see if I can explain that. Now, if I say it's a condition, I mean language is the very condition of our being in the world. It's the condition of needing and attempting to tell what is going on. See, part of the problem here is that we always have a kind of understanding, and then interpretation is the way that the understanding develops itself. And that interpretation in humans is a kind of articulate interpretation, and it's not as if it's only in the articulating that the language is going on. It's the very condition of the understanding and the intelligibility. And so I guess what part of what we're trying to part of what I would try to suggest is that I do think there's a difference between other animal communication systems and human language. The problem is that humans also share the bulk of those communication systems with other animals, but they have logos or language in addition, and it is a kind of condition that then takes over some of those other functions and reinterprets them. A different way to say that is the difficulty in talking about language as a condition is that historical developments that have now been added on to, altered, and basically transformed the phenomena of language, things like literacy, alphabetacy, various communication technologies, these now we they sort of are overlaid into language, and we see language through them, and that makes it difficult to try to see what quotes language is. But again, when I say that language is a condition rather than an activity, what I mean is that it's not that language is just a discontinuous act. It's not that, sometimes I'm juggling and then sometimes I'm making coffee and sometimes I'm eating and sometimes I'm talking and then sometimes I'm walking the dog. See, I think when we try to think about language that way, we misunderstand the way that language is the ongoing condition of trying and needing to tell what's going on. It's a kind of horizon of articulate intelligibility that accompanies human understanding. Okay, that's the first thing. The second point would be that, and this is a major issue, I would love to haggle, I'm sure other people want to get a piece on this, is that language is not a tool. I don't know I think the reason why people get this, I guess I do somewhat know why people come to this, is I think because so much of language has been made over in the image of literacy and of communication technologies, and people now largely think of the instrumental stance that they can and often do take toward language, that they assume that language is a kind of tool. It is not. Again, language is a condition. It's more like a metabolic process. It's a continuous process of taking the world into account. It's not a saying things. I think that's, again, a basic mistake. When I say it's not a tool, uh, yeah, again, language isn't a tool any more than, say, breath is a tool. Breath is a basic resource. I mean, we breathe. Now, we can take an intentional orientation toward our breathing and actually meditate and achieve a certain kind of articulated consciousness through regulating our breathing in the same way that we can grow conscious in the way that we breathe articulate sounds. I think there is a natural resource of acting. I mean, is action itself a tool? I mean, if you're going to say, I think if someone wants to say that speech is a tool, you might as well say that all actions are tools too. I mean, there's something odd. It's sort of like saying, Kenneth Burke would say, it's like saying that metals are a tool. No, metals are a basic resource that can be made into a tool. Language is a basic resource. Now, here's where we need to get into the how humans share with other animals' basic communication systems. And here's, I guess, part of this issue. It's that language grows atop of and continues out various kinds of sign systems already within the natural world. Now, the basic fundamental sign system that's at the level of even inorganic matter. I'm talking about, the physics and the chemistry. It's indexicality. Indexicality is the basic ground level of interaction. It has to do with proximity, and the values of the indexical are causal. So, I mean, Peirce was a chemist. Right? I mean, people need to understand the Peircean and Jakobson are the two preferred people for the semiotic models here, not Saussure. Saussure is going to kind of begin with this problem. That's like there's a leap between the animal and the human, where the human is a sort of wholly arbitrary, free-floating signifier, where for Peirce, for Jakobson, no, that wouldn't be true. No, the point is that all language has an indexical level, right? We do have a causal relation. It is when you can tell who was the producer of the utterance. You're standing around in a room. Your ear can tell the directionality of the sound by the acoustical waves. There's various sound production, even any word. It has to be either written or produced, or even if you can say it's internally there has to be some sort of neuronal firing pattern that there is a causal relation. There's an indexicality level there, okay? So all words have that indexical character, and that's largely what you share with animals. Animals share with us an indexicality. With regard to words, right? They can tell the directionality of sound. They can see the mark or the etching. I mean, with the actual perceptual process. The next level up on top of that is the iconic. And so there's the indexical, the iconic. The iconic is the similarity that can be seen or heard with regard to any indexical sign. I mean, it is quite fascinating that any word in a language rhymes with other words in that language, and that's how poetry is possible. For a dog, it's also how you can kind of tease it by saying words that rhyme with the word, and then the dog reacts to that. Well, it's reacting to that by an associative principle of iconicity, is the way that Jakobson would say that. And the point is that if something sounds like something else, the dog will react to it by a principle of association. It will seem to think that it's similar enough to take it as if it were that sign. Which means, again, it's not causally connected as an icon or as an index is, but it's not arbitrary. To claim that it's arbitrary misses the motivation in the sign, and the motivation is a kind of similarity based in the iconicity of the original index and then the other one that's quotes being an icon of that. The last one is a symbol. Yeah, a symbol is quotes what we normally think of when we think of language. People say, "Oh yeah, well, language is a symbol. It's symbolic. It doesn't have a causal relation. It's arbitrary. It's by cultural convention," and people give all those kinds of arguments. That's somewhat true, and there's a point that people are trying to convey, and I think everyone who is a sophomore in college, they come to understand that. That's a sophomore point, though. Ultimately, we want to move into the problems of motivated discourse, the problem of pronoun agreement, the problem of language itself having words, discrete words that are symbols, learned from others, they're arbitrary conventions, but that operate as discrete in indexes. So a word like this, or here, or now, or I mean, so much of Douglas Hofstadter's work has been on showing the way that indexicality is the ground level of a semiotic system, but it has grown through discursive capacities into now, again, we're a self-reflexive loop in the sense that now I can say I. Well, this I who says I is a weird postulated I. I mean, there is an indexical character to the me who does the uttering, that the actual physical body that's the source of the acoustical blasts. But then that word I is a word in English whose referent takes meaning according to who says it. That is, when another person says the word I, we know that that word is referring to a different person. So somehow there is a kind of causal connection between the word and its referent, even though the word is a cultural convention. These kinds of dynamics have then been made further complicated by literacy, and that would be the last point. That literacy, alphabetacy have radically changed the nature of language. They have tolerated novelty. They have made for inventiveness in language. Nominalization is a process that often occurs at literacy, where complex processes get turned into nouns. Increased crack growth rate is a great expression that David Olson uses. Again, increased crack growth rate. That's a very literate expression. We can know that cracks grow at a certain rate and that can increase, and then we can just through nominalization have this very abstract principle. To be comfortable in highly abstract thought, in abstractions that are far removed, abstractions like heavy or light rather than just big or small, right? Abstractions that are removed from the other sensory fields. Those are the kinds that humans largely deal with in language, but it's literacy that's amplified that. At this point in history, it's now very difficult to disentangle literacy's effects from all the way back to this original thing that I was calling the condition that we are in, the condition of logos, that the human being as human suffers. At any rate, those are some contributions, and hope people enjoyed those. Love to hear people's response to some of that. Okay, thanks.